Welcome, Washington County Democrats and friends, to another down the ballot interview with a Democratic candidate for governor. Today, we're being joined by Michael Trimble, who is running for governor. And Michael, why don't you just start a few moments and just, introduce yourself to the Democrats?
Thank you, Carl, for having me. I really appreciate it. Hello, everybody. As you can see, I have clip-on sandals. I am an avid cyclist. I biked 10,868 miles last year. And what I would like to do is to be able to offer this to all Oregonians across the state, wherever they live, because biking is such a freeing and liberating experience and adventure. And as you can see, I'm at the foot of the Springwater Corridor Trail, one of the most infamous Portland biking locations. And even though I may have no arms, don't let that fool you. I am very capable and able. I do work full-time for Care Oregon. It's a nonprofit healthcare organization providing healthcare to members of OHP in Multnomah County, Jackson County, Columbia County, Clatsop County. I'm sure I'm forgetting a county. But all in all, I just would like to take my free biking spirit to Salem and be able to show these legislators, how we can actually do the work for the people of this amazing state.
Oh, wonderful. Well, the first question that we ask all the candidates is, why are you a Democrat?
Yes. I'm a Democrat because the Democratic Party best represents my ideals and values. The Democratic Party helps the underdog, helps the disenfranchised, helps the disadvantaged, helps individuals with disabilities like myself. The Democratic Party cares about people's rights, such as women's rights, and making sure that they are protected. And they also are trying to hold corporations responsible to make sure that the wealthy do pay their fair share of taxes. And one of the things that I love about Democrats is that they really do go out of their way to make sure that everybody is included. And like Obama, he gave us Obamacare. What I would like to do is expand OHP to all Oregonians. And this is a value that a Democrat holds, not so much a Republican per se, but I just want to be able to show people, the Democrats do care about you. And it's a party that best represents my ideals. I know it was a very long-winded answer.
Oh, no, not at all. This is great. So the next question that all the candidates get asked, of course, and you're probably going to get asked this a lot over the coming months, is why are you running for governor?
Yes. I am running for governor because I'm sick and tired of seeing inaction in Salem. Oregon is one of the very few blue trifecta states, meaning that we have supermajorities of Democrats in all three branches of government, and yet housing remains unaffordable. Despite Obamacare being a law of the land, there are still people that are uninsured or underinsured. And we need to be able to boost infrastructure for cycling and pedestrians to try to make Oregon a more walk culture society as opposed to a car society. And this can be done. And I believe I'm the only body that can do this, because the thing that actually prompted me to finally enter the race was last year, DeFazio tried to pass the biking bill, which he was asking for 5% of ODOT funding to go to bikes, and it just died in committee. And I was like, are we serious? That the Democrats can even pass it? We control both houses. Even the Republicans weren't opposed to it. It's not like we're asking for more money from ODOT. We're just simply saying that of the money that is allocated to ODOT, 5% of it needs to go to pedestrian and cycling infrastructure. And under my governorship, I would like to ramp that up to 10%, because we can't push for a cycling walk culture if it's not safe. And Portland definitely has a very good biking infrastructure, but at the end of the day, it definitely needs to improve. And I would like to roll out what we have in Portland to all the cities in Oregon that want it: Salem, Bend, Eugene, especially the rural areas where there isn't a whole lot, but it can definitely be done, because biking is a very freeing thing. I mentioned this earlier. I want to expand OHP to all Oregonians making under $93,600. Why that money figure? That's because that is what the governor earns. And I'll be the first person to move into the governor's pension on OHP. That is actually my health insurance, even though I work for Care Oregon. Fortunately, I live in a state of Oregon that is forthright and foreseeable enough to see that people with disabilities can work and still should be able to keep their health care. And Oregon allows me to keep OHP, even though I make well over the minimum threshold of the income guidelines. And OHP is amazing. It definitely does need a lot of improvements. And me working for Care Oregon, I'm very familiar with OHP. I'll be a very OHP-centric governor to make sure that all of these prioritizations are simplified. I talk to too many people who get the prioritizations denied for nonsensical reasons because a line of code didn't meet between certain parameters. And I just am tired of the gridlock and deadlock in Salem. And we need to get the show going, as they say.
So it's clear, transportation, healthcare advocacy. What do you think is the most important issue facing Oregonians in 2022?
Oh my goodness, cost of living. It is too expensive to live. Wages sadly have not kept pace with a cost of living. And one of the things I want to do is lower rents across the state to make them more affordable, like a typical utility bill. I have talked to people, Carl, who are paying 60, 70, 80% of their income in rent. Not only is that unforgivable, but that is just downright criminal. You should not be paying that much money just to be able to have a roof over your head. By me expanding OHP to all Oregonians, that is another way I can lower the cost of living because they'll actually be able to afford their health care. Obviously, if you're making $35,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, you can afford to pay a premium. But even still, with OHP for all, that would include everything: prescriptions, visits, no co-pays, no deductibles. I know Patrick Starnes is also for OHP for all, but for the record, I entered the race long before he did, and I've been pushing OHP for all for months. I don't see why Oregon cannot be the first state in the country to have universal health care via OHP, and we can bill it as Joe Biden's public option because he did campaign on that. Sadly, though, he will never get anything out of Congress because of the way it's set up. But the public option, obviously, Oregon can't afford to expand OHP to every Oregonian. But if the federal government helps us out with the finances, we can definitely make it a reality. And I don't see any reason why President Biden cannot join it, since it is, after all, his public option.
Because you're talking about OHP and ODOT. What are your experiences working with the Oregon legislature?
Yes, I have lobbied in Salem quite a few times in 2017 and 2018 during the time that they were trying to cut social benefits programs. And I was at the time living on 12th and Washington at Rosenbaum Plaza, which is subsidized housing. I think I was only paying $25 a month in rent, and I was living downtown, mind you. Again, this is another amazing aspect of Oregon, that they really do help people who need affordable housing. Unfortunately, the waiting lists are way too long to get into it. But back to the legislature, I was able to successfully argue that if you cut the social programs now, Oregon and the taxpayer will end up paying a lot more down the road. And we were actually able to stave off the cuts. And Representative Rob Noss was instrumental in making sure that that bill did not die and actually went through. And it was his leadership that really helped. And I would like to bring, we can all work together sense to be able to make sure that we do get legislation passed in Salem. Again, we have supermajorities of Democrats in all three branches. Why we can't get these things done is beyond me, but I will definitely light a fire, and we are going to get things done. You will never, ever, Carl, catch me sitting on my hands doing nothing. I'll be too busy doing the people's work.
Well, I mean, speaking of the legislature and getting things done, one of our Democratic submitted questions from a Wasco Dems activist was from Maureen in Rock Creek, and she wanted to know, how can we advance our policy goals and avoid the legislative walkouts we've been experiencing the last couple of sessions?
Yes. This is a very thorny issue because on the one hand, I do support Republicans' rights walking out. As a minority, they are afforded protections and they need to be able to voice their dissent. And we saw just recently with the Texas Democrats, who did exactly the same thing. They walked out of the legislature postponing the anti-voting rights bill that Abbott sadly signed into law eventually. And so we need to be able to protect the minority to make sure that they are able to be heard. And so what I would do as a governor is sit down with them to figure out, what exactly is it that we can work with? Why are you walking out? It's not their fault that Oregon, along with Texas, are two states that require supermajorities for quorums. and they're simply using the tools available to them. And all of these measures that have been introduced to penalize them, it's not right. We need to protect them as a minority, because I don't ever see Democrats being the minority in Oregon, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. I mean, who would have thought that a candidate without arms would be running for governor? And so we need to sit down together with Republicans, bring them to the table, and figure out what to do. I do realize that last year, Democrats literally bent over backwards trying to give Republicans everything they wanted on the environmental bill, and yet they still walked out. And so it's not the Republicans' fault for using the available tools they have to them. We do need to change the Constitution to make sure that you don't require a supermajority. But at the end of the day, though, a minority does need protecting, because what is the point of a minority if it has absolutely no voice or no choice in the matter?
Sort of following these same, we're talking about, the role of our government and, the different players within it. Carol from Tualatin, another one of our activists, asks, how do we proactively manage our state government to avoid the meltdowns we've seen in like the unemployment department or the rollout of the Affordable Care Act? How do we prevent those things from happening?
Well, this is another thing that I will bring to the job if elected, is that, with Care Oregon, I do nothing but customer service. I call members every day, welcoming them to OHP. I'm sure they've heard my voicemails. And then a lot of times, because I work a split shift and I work in the evenings, they think that we're spamming them when I'm calling them. And let me tell all Oregonians, no, these are not spam calls. These are not cons. When I ask you for your last name, date of birth, and mailing address, this is a HIPAA requirement, so we can talk about your healthcare and just to go over your benefits. And so what I want to do is actually update the customer service infrastructure that is in Salem. It was actually very, I don't know if the word pathetic is right, but I guess very sad, in that last year during the pandemic, when people were unemployed, the unemployment department was just completely frozen. Salem never was meant to be a remote workforce, and they never upgraded the infrastructures even then, even now. And so I actually had to tell people, submit your application with your state representative or state senator and have them physically walk your application over to the employment department to process, because there was no way of getting a hold of anybody. And even today, when you call OHP, you can be on hold for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Why OHP doesn't offer a callback like most companies do, like Amazon, Comcast, Apple? If there's a long queue, they will hold your place in line and then they will call you back. And so what I want to do is completely overhaul the entire customer service infrastructure to actually make it responsible and accountable to the people, because there is no reason why state government cannot do basic things like answer the phone.
So moving back to the nuts and bolts of the campaign, who do you consider your base of support in the upcoming election?
Oh, well, obviously tenants all across the state, especially in the Portland metro area, since rents are sky high, out of control. They are definitely not meeting economic realities. I live in a 350 square foot studio and I pay $1,200. I mean, that is just obscene. So obviously I need supporters from tenants. Obviously I need supporters, from the second community. Jonathan Moss of Bike Portland has been very instrumental in helping to get the word out. He's been very instrumental in being letting people know, when there are closures, there are construction projects. His website, Bike Portland, is amazing. And so obviously I will need a lot of support from them. I've actually been called governor by quite a few cyclists as I pass them by. I always feel bad that I can't wave to them. And then when I stop by, when we finally stop, I was telling them, I would wave to you, but as you can see, I'm a bit short-handed. For once, we can't blame COVID-19. So I'll need support from tenants, from cyclists, because my campaign is a grassroots campaign. Even though I'm sort of well-known in Portland, I'm not really well-known outside of Portland, and I don't have the big name recognition. I don't have the big dollar contribution recognition like Tina Kotek does. I'm going to be requiring grassroots and basically people that want to return state government back to the people, to actually show that government can be of the people, for the people, and by the people.
Who do you consider your political mentors?
Yes. Well, I'm hoping that maybe one day I'll be able to meet some of them as governor. Obviously, Bernie Sanders. His very progressive outlook on life in America is very encouraging, very promising, very robust. I would love to meet him. Obviously, President Obama is another political mentor. He faced untold hindrances during his presidency, and yet despite that, he persevered. He got Obamacare out of Congress. He was able to do so much even when Congress was not able to do it. And as governor, I will definitely be using the powers of the executive branch. COVID-19, if anything, showed us just how powerful a governor is. And if the state legislature decides to play games with me in stalls, I can always use the executive branch to force it through. One of the things that President Obama did was he gave children of illegal immigrants protections through the DACA program. And while some might argue that was an overreach of his powers, when a Congress won't do anything, what does an executive have to do? I don't see myself facing the same opposition that Obama faced, but again, I definitely will not be afraid to use the pen. On my first day, Carl, I plan to freeze all highway freeway expansion projects and send that money to cycling and pedestrian infrastructure projects. I plan on opening up all the roadways to cyclists. If states like Arizona have highways open to cyclists, I don't know why Oregon can have roads open to cyclists. And so I will use the power available to me, and I will not waste it.
Have you been able to get out and do much? Because you mentioned you were, fairly well known in the Portland area. Have you been able to get out and to travel to other places yet to go campaign?
I have not. I mean, right now it's still very early in the campaign stages, but I definitely would like to do that, especially, in Salem, Eugene, Bend. And call me crazy, but I would also like to campaign in the Republican areas because, again, Republicans do have a lot of good ideas. And one of the complaints that I've heard is that Republicans feel shut out. And sadly, for better part of it, they have been shut out, And they're shut out in the legislature because Democrats don't pay any attention to them. And this is why we have these crazy walkouts. And that just completely puts legislation freezing. And, I know there's a greater Idaho movement. As governor, I definitely will not stand in the way of them joining Idaho if Idaho actually ever did agree to it. But at the end of the day, we do need to bring Republicans on board. They are our citizens. They are our friends and neighbors. And, we may not agree on much, but there's still no excuse for not being civil with them. And so as the months progress, I definitely do want to get out there, be able to campaign, maybe do some cycling town halls. I know when Alyssa Kinney-Guy was representative for the Northeast, she did those all the time. I really miss those. And so just be able to get people out together in a common unison.
What's an interesting fact about yourself that voters would be surprised to learn about you?
Well, I do have a cat. And believe it or not, Carl, he will be 19 in May.
Wow.
And he has just been an absolute godsend to me, or should I say cat send rather. And he's just been adorable. And one of the things I want to do is add vet care to OHP because there have been thousands of studies done that show having a pet is extremely good for you, for your health, for your mental sanity. Unfortunately, though, vet care is very expensive. And if it was to be pledged into OHP, then this way, people can't afford it. I mean, my cat is a what you call a companion service animal. And one of the things I would like to do as governor is make sure that all pets can stay in apartments without having to pay a pet rental fee, a pet security deposit. Pets are wonderful for everybody. And so he's just been my life and joy. And I just love him. I love all pets, but obviously, I am a cat person.
Well, we're just about done. And I think it would be a shame because you've had the bike in the frame the whole time. We have a lot of cyclists here in Washington County. Could you tell us a little about your bike?
Oh my goodness, yes. Byron, do you want to come up closer? Yes. So this is how I steer, Carl. My knob. Oh, hello. I'd wave, but still short-handed. Sorry, Carl. And so and then over here, Byron, I've got my electronic shifting, Carl. And then this over here is my brake, which I control with my knee when I'm biking. Let me see if I can actually do a little bit of biking for you with my sign on. Let's see here. Let's do a little U-turn. Awesome. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I have biked in Washington County. It is a bit hillier than Portland, but it is really nice. And so if anybody would love to join me, I think that would be absolutely awesome. And then I break like this with my silver thing here.
Unique.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, wow.
Yes. As I told you, Carl, I get a lot of attention on the cycling trail. What was that?
I don't think I can do that. That's amazing.
Well, you know what they say, where there's a will, there's a bike.
I love it. I love it.
Yes. Hold on to that. And so that is the bike. I call it the Black Mamba. And the tires over here, Carl, are 100% solid. They are puncture proof. You never have to pump them up, nothing like that. And this bike has definitely given me a lot of joy, but also almost cost me my life, because on June 18, 2016, I lost control of my bike. I'm not sure how I did that, but I did. And I was in a coma for 9 days. And that's actually when I joined OHP, because they had told me if I had been wearing a helmet, that I would have had a major concussion, but not gone into a coma. And one of the things I would like to do is mandate helmets for all cyclists. You only have one head, and you need to protect it while you have it.
Wow. Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure to interact with you and get to know you a little bit through this interview. My friends, Washington County Democrats, Michael is running for governor. As soon as we can, we'll get this interview uploaded to our website with all of his social media links, so you can interact with his campaign and ask him more questions.
And I want to thank you, Carl, for extending me the time to be able to introduce myself to the Washington County Democrats. And I definitely see lots of biking in the future with the Washington County Democrats as we, pedal Oregon forward to a more progressive future.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. Thank you, Carl.